There's this amazing poet, Jordan Carnes, who was at the gym with me. They came in one day and they're like, Ellis, I just had the most amazing experience at the hot springs related to your book. And I was like, okay, what happened? And they're like, okay, so I was using the hot springs and I came back to my Doc Martens and there was a Post-it note tucked inside the Doc Martens that said, hey, were you that dyke that was reading We Both Laughed in Pleasure? If so, I live in Oakland. Here's my number. And they texted and they were like, hey, I wasn't that person, but like, great book or, whatever. So it really was a moment of using the book as a way to flag.
No, totally.
I was like, I think I want to get off birth control if I want to go on T, maybe, because I take birth control to not get my period. My doctor was like, no, you need to stay on that. And I was like, why? He's like, you're going to want men so badly. And I was like, whoa. And he was like, I don't know what it is. It just like happens. Like it happens with all my friends. And so it's very interesting, this idea that like you are just going to want dick. Like,
yeah, it is really interesting, this kind of idea around you go on T and then you become like gay boy.
Because then it also becomes the question of like, how influenced are we by hormones? Is that just like everything? Like, is that just like who we are? Like our preferences, our emotions, like all of these things,
Totally.
And I think no, like gender non-essentialism would be like, no, that's not true. But that it like does become kind of true, I think, in this interesting way.
Yeah, totally.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm curious about like attraction to men meaning more than just like, sometimes it's just easier to hook up with men.
Ooh, yeah.
Just like culturally.
Yes.
And sometimes it's like faster, it like doesn't have to mean
as
much, or you know what I mean? Like, but I'm also kind of like, that doesn't serve men well. So like, I'm not like, this is great.
No. But what you're saying is like, rather than this kind of like, T makes you attracted to men, it's like maybe T makes you want to have just like slightly easier instant gratification, like sexual experiences
in a lot of different ways.
And I'm sorry, that's not happening with lesbians. Like, let's just be so honest. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
Like, as someone who's also kind of wanted that recently, it's like, it's not happening. And my thought process was like, maybe I'll fuck men because that'll just be so easy. Like, that was my thought process. I think you're absolutely onto something. I think that's right.
And this is like its own separate conversation. I think this is just rooted in my experience. I know that there are some people who are like, no, I'm in love with men, like when they go on TV. And they're like, I want a long-term relationship with a man. I want a partner. And I'm like, that was not me. That was not me at all necessarily. But when it comes to just kind of like run-of-the-mill cis men on the internet, those apps look totally different. They say like 0.5 miles on them.
I know. What was the thing that was like, there was some kind of like political convention in like somewhere and like Grindr was like going crazy or something.
Wait.
Yeah, the RNC, and like Grindr was going absolutely insane. And so it's just like, even straight men are clearly seeking out these kind of experiences, but like homophobia and things are like holding them back. And so it's just like, maybe it's not crazy that like when you have this like surge of testosterone, you're gonna like seek out those experiences. And maybe it's not just like men, but like what men represent. Maybe is like what we're saying.
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, what is the mental math for like during lose time that it's like that would make you less trans? Like I don't really understand that either.
That's so crazy that they're like, well, if you're into men, just stay a woman and then you can be normal. Like, I think like, that's the math.
That's the logic. But that's just so crazy because like being with a man as a woman versus a man is so different. I'm like, come on.
Well, they were so anti-gay that they were like, we will not use resources to create a gay person. Like, we will use these to make you straight.
Yes.
And if you're going to be like a binary man and find a wife, like, of course.
Then we'll give you this medicine. Yes. Oh my God.
So crazy.
The fact that like the state still has anything to do with like what people want to do.
Totally.
Their bodies, like, bitch, you're telling me I can't like transform myself into like an elf and go live in the woods if I want to?
As long as it's a straight elf.
Right, exactly. So as you guys know, this season, we're doing these kind of like mini deep dives into these like topics that interest us. And after we did our amazing interview with Tourmaline about her biography of Marsha P. Johnson, we kind of wanted to dig a little bit more into like this thread of like authors and like archivists who are kind of doing this work to preserve trans legacies and trans ancestors.
Yeah, and then we thought of everyone's favorite sexy beach read. We both laughed in pleasure, a pink book with a big butt on it. And I remember seeing this, everyone being like, okay, book of the year.
Right.
So yeah, we wanted to talk to these people who edited together the diaries of someone named Lou Sullivan.
And for those of you who don't know, Lou Sullivan was arguably probably one of the first out gay trans men who did a lot of work specifically trying to like change the language in the world of medical transition to include trans people who are also gay.
My name is Ellis Martin. I'm an archivist. I work in digitization in art museums and archives, and have recently gotten really into intellectual property rights. So I'm kind of scheming about a career swerve, but right now just...
Would the career be kind of like stealing intellectual property that just expired, or like...
No, yeah, would the career be theft?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to get into heist.
Yeah.
Art heist. People ask me that all the time. They're like, do you ever think about stealing stuff? I'm like, I don't want any of this stuff. Like,
yeah,
I love that it has a home.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah, that's some stuff about me. Zach?
Hello. I'm Zach Ozma. I'm an artist and a writer. I work in several different media, but mostly ceramics. And I'm also a ceramics teacher for grown-ups in like a community arts.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm looking at getting a class like that for my partner. There's like a studio near our house.
It's the best. I love it. And I just finished getting a home studio set up, which is incredible.
Oh, that's so sick. Like with a kiln and everything?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so cool.
It's amazing to like let a pot dry while you eat lunch.
The pure life.
Yeah, it really does feel like I'm doing like old style having a job, like ancient style having a job.
Yes, totally. Okay, let's hop into Lou. For people who don't really know about him, can you give us like an intro into Lou Sullivan?
Lou Sullivan, born in 1951, just outside Milwaukee, grew up kind of a hippie music fan, activist-y type with a bunch of siblings in a quite progressive Catholic family. He later moved to San Francisco. He was a typesetter, he was a writer, and he spent a lot of years trying to access transition care through official medical channels, and was repeatedly turned away because he was a gay man. And at the time, I mean, we can get into this later, but at the time, there were pretty tight restrictions on like the quote unquote goal result of someone transitioning, and being gay, especially a gay man, was certainly not one of them. So he ended up doing a lot of activist work and community work that benefited the broader trans community, particularly gay trans men, in order to access care himself. He founded FTM International. He also was a historian and wrote a book about another historical trans figure, Jack B. Garland. And then, like many other men in his generation, he became sick with HIV/AIDS, and he passed away from complications of the disease in 1991 at home in San Francisco. He also was one of the founders of the GLBT Historical Society in SF, and when he was dying, made sure that his papers went to that archive. So that's why we have so much of his life available to us, is because he was interested in history, he was interested in archives, and he made efforts to make sure his own work was preserved in that way.
Wow. And so did you partner with them, and that was part of the process of like choosing diary entries and kind of compiling this book?
Yeah, we started working with GLBT via actually the San Francisco History Center that was at San Francisco Public Library, the main branch downtown SF. And the diaries were on long-term loan to SF History Center at the time. And so what was amazing about that is that unlike many archives, the History Center had an open, basically like office hours where you could come in and, have a 9 to 5 or whatever it was. And they would pull things. The page would pull whatever you wanted to see. At that time, you didn't have to make an appointment, and you could just sit there and look at whatever you wanted to look at.
Oh my God.
And so here we were going to the History Center, and it was very clear from the start of the project this was a book project. And so we were looking at it and realized early on that we're never going to make it through all of this digitized or all of this material, just going through individual page, partially because it was just kind of so like mystical and amazing. Like at one point, maybe it was the first day or the second day, we found a hair in the one of the diaries.
Right, and it's like, is it his hair? Is it a researcher's hair? It's kind of like important.
Totally. Well, that was going to be my question. Were these the actual pages? Like this was like lined paper? Like these were the journal entries?
Yes.
These weren't digitized?
Yes, no, it hadn't been digitized. So there were 24 diaries and
one Baker box.
One Baker box.
Gosh.
And but if you think about it, that's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
In Catholic school cursive also.
No way.
In like tight, slanty, mid-century Catholic school cursive.
We love. Oh my God.
So we realized early on that we needed to image them. And so I had digitization experience, and so set up a little setup. It was like 2 IKEA clip like book lamps that were like flashing across the surface, and like a tripod that was just turned upside down. And this was in a public space. Other people we're in like a big people are doing research, and here we are, just 2 little freaks. Just
I'm making the motion of of turning a page slowly.
People are like, is that legal? Like, are they stealing?
we got some questions for sure.
But also one of the librarians who worked there was really into that archive. He was this 45-year-old, probably gay man who, when I was, a sophomore in college, seemed quite old and wise to me. And, I requested that part of the archive, and he was like, oh, you're going to love this. These are really amazing. And a few times when we went, he was there and, had some kind of cheerleader on the sidelines energy.
Totally. What you guys are doing is really important. It's like
1000%. Like,
Thank you, Dad.
Yeah, totally.
You're the wind beneath my wings.
Yeah. And you originally heard about Lou in a trans poetics class?
Yeah, so I was going to California College of the Arts and took a class with I took a required class my freshman year with this amazing professor / poet, Rebecca Edwards. Mm-hmm. And I really liked the material that she was assigning, and just her. And I found out that the next year she was going to teach a class at Mills College, RIP.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Also in Oakland, also RIP to the CCA Oakland campus. Many things have changed.
Wow.
But anyway, CCA and Mills at the time had a cross-registration agreement. So you had to do a little paperwork, but you could take a class at the other college as just part of your regular tuition. And so I found out about this class she was teaching on trans poetics as I was hanging out in this vibrantly queer and trans East Bay experimental poetry scene. And so I was get me in there, cross-registered for the class, and then was taking the bus up into the hills once a week to be in a very different feeling college campus than the one that I was on. And the 2 textbooks we were using for the class were the Transgender Studies Reader 2, the Blue Belly Button book. I think the other one's the green one, yeah. And then Troubling the Line, which was a collection of trans poetry and poetics. So every week, Rebecca was pairing like a piece of critical writing from one book with a poet from the other.
Whoa, cool.
And I don't remember what poet was paired with Lou Sullivan, but we had 2 readings that week. And one of them was by Susan Stryker, the one with the long title, Portrait of a Trans Fag Drag Hag as a Young Man, The Activist Life of Louis G. Sullivan.
Wow.
Excellent essay. It basically lays out Lou's kind of personal trip through the cruel machinery of medicine and legality around transness and contextualizes that in the way that access to trans medicine shifted over the course of the 20th century. Susan, if you're listening, we want the update. And then the other essay was in Transgender Studies Reader 2 and is called Embracing Transition, Dancing in the Folds of Time by Julian Carter, which is a really beautiful critical analysis of a dance piece by a choreographer named Sean Dorsey called Lou.
So
I read these 2 essays, and aside from them just being individually good pieces of critical writing on their own, the little excerpts of Lou's writing were really interesting, like just, and kind of the picture of how he acted and talked was just kind of captivating. And so I did a little Googie. And back then there was not a lot about Lou online. There was like a brief Wikipedia article. There was Rhys Ernst's short film, Dear Lou Sullivan. There was a very like Web 1.0 style page for a past exhibition at the GLBT Historical Society Museum.
Wow.
I believe curated by Megan Rohrer. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last name right. And they had also uploaded some clips to YouTube of these interviews that Lou did in the last few years of his life with Dr. Ira Pauly. And they're interviews intended to be viewed by med students in psychology. And he's getting asked questions about his transition, about his sexuality, and about his AIDS diagnosis.
Wow. And are these like fun to watch? Like, are these cool questions, or are you like, wow,
No,
you're really doing a lot of labor for these like doctors right now?
It's a lot. They're a little, there's some good moments, but it's a little bit of a hard watch. And actually the Historical Society now has the full video up on the Internet Archive.
Wow.
So check that out if you want to sort of like
cringe a little bit.
watch. But there's some cool moments. Anyway, I got really invested in Lou, and then I found the archive. Ellis, what's the proper word? Materials guide.
The finding aid.
The finding aid. Thank you. I found the finding aid and realized that all the diaries were on loan to the Historical Society. And just like Ellis was saying, that it was therefore incredibly easy to like hop on the BART, get off at Civic Center, go upstairs. And so I started going and taking people to visit Lou and made a lot of like sculpture, performance, social practice art about him for the rest of my time at CCA.
Wow. Oh, that's super cool.
Thanks.
Including recreating the set of this like staged news set for the Ira Pauly interviews.
Yeah.
You recreated, right?
Yeah. So for my like thesis show at the end of my BFA, I made like a third of the gallery into this space. Like I got curtains that matched the ones they had. I bought like the cheapest carpet at the hardware store and rolled that out on the floor. I was able to find not exactly the same, but really similar chairs. They're the the steel case Pollock chair in orange. In the original, they have a cream colored plastic shell. The ones I found were black, close enough. A couple of house plants. And the audience was supposed to sit in the seats as a pair. And the only thing that was an addition to just trying to purely recreate it was there was a note on each chair, and one of them said, Lou sits here, and the other one said, another man sits here and asks Lou about his genitals.
So good.
That's really wild. I'm like, I really want to watch those videos. I feel like after I got top surgery, the hospital that I went through asked me to do like some Q&As for their pediatrics wing. And so I did like a Q&A with like 2 other trans people, like panel style. And all these doctors were just kind of like, is they plural? Like, you know, it's just like, like so grinding. I was like, okay. But I'm like, oh yeah, if you have the energy, kind of cool to do, but you don't have to.
I bet you'll have a similar feeling when you watch the Polly videos. But Lou's very clear, even in the video, he is like, I am doing this so that in the future, when a gay trans man goes to the doctor, or as he calls them, the gender professionals, which I love so much. There's such bitterness in the way he says the gender professionals.
Totally.
Which I love. But he is like, you know, I don't want the gender professionals to be telling future trans men that they don't exist because they're gay. So I have to make proof in the official record.
Yeah, totally.
But he doesn't look like he's having fun.
Yeah.
And he's also, he did it a couple times over a couple years. And even in the first video, you can see his suit's a little big from him, but by the second video, he's really like wasting.
Wow. Yeah.
And so he's just like, he's physically kind of shrinking in this really imposing space.
Wow. Yeah. That's so interesting too, because his kind of like diagnosis, like that kind of end stretch of years, I could see really getting kind of like, I'm going to make sure I crack the door open for the people behind me, kind of like, you know, that something leading him to want to do something like that. That's really cool. Ellis, when did you join the project, or how did you get involved?
So back to Rebecca Edwards. I was about to take a class with her at Mills. I was there and not CCA. And Mills was a small campus. And so we were at some kind of lunchtime lecture, and I saw her, and we hadn't met yet. And so I after the lecture, I went up and introduced myself because I knew we were going to be in class together. The class was Queer Archival Desires. And we just started talking, and she said, oh, you know, do you know about Lou Sullivan? And at the time, you know, I had a really very baseline understanding of Lou as important trans elder, ancestor, you know, whatever, and not much nuance or understanding of him. And then she told me about this project that this guy, Zach, was doing with Lou's diaries, and that they were looking for an intern. And so I think there was a call. Did you actually put out a call? Or was it just an email address?
Yeah. Around the time I was finishing college, my really good friend, Zoe Tuck, who is a poet, was working for this small, like, art freak poetry press, Timeless Infinite Light. And she had the idea that they should do a queer history imprint and publish, like, you know, out of print work and things like that. And so she was the one who initially was like, why don't you do a book of this? Because I'd been like, these are so good. They read like a book. I wish it was a book I could loan people. And she was like,
she just held a mirror
very
up.
Sweetly. She was like, okay, dummy. And then she brought it to everybody else at Timeless, and they were into it. So I started trying to work on it, and immediately was like, I can't digitize this by myself. Like, step one is very clearly digitize, because you can't just be restricted to the hours that you're allowed to look at the real thing. And it's also just somewhat like nerve-wracking to be paging through the real thing.
Totally.
Like, for context, we ended up transcribing like 180,000 words. So you couldn't do that in person, you know?
Oh my
No.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I also didn't have any archive experience, you know, like I'd been in an archive as a researcher a little bit. You know, I like the library, but my degree was in community arts. Like, I was coming from like a studio art plus working with the public and a little grant writing kind of place.
Totally. It's nice to find like powers combined. Like you're like, who does this come effortlessly to? Like, can we, you know?
I asked every good queer professor I'd ever had to send this call to students who they thought might be a good fit. Because of course the press was like, we can pay them in swag and poetry books. You know, like we were trying to write grants. We like weren't getting them.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Right. So there was
That's
like,
awesome.
this was a like
tinctures and kombucha scobies. Yeah.
Vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, vibes.
Like a ride to the BART. We can compensate you in like a quick ride to the BART.
I can borrow my bike for a day, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
So I only got 2 applications. The other person was obviously like incorrect. Like hadn't answered some of the questions, you know, hadn't done some of the kind of basic stuff. And then Ellis's application was so good. We were like, let's just meet with this guy and see, maybe we don't need to keep looking. Cause I don't know. I don't even remember exactly what you said, but like it was structured kind of as like what do you think about, you know, like, what do you think about old people who might say stuff that young people think is offensive? You know, like, can you work with materials like this? Because you have to keep in mind this was the Bay Area in like 2016, 17.
I don't think that's changed.
I don't think it maybe has.
Totally.
I don't know. I live in Philadelphia now. It's a slightly different vibe.
Absconded.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, so we met up at that cafe on MLK that doesn't exist anymore.
Black Spring.
We met up at Black Spring Coffee. Ellis had a little Rush enamel pin on his lapel. Like gave me a really beautiful zine he made. And we talked about the project and I was like, okay, sold. And then we probably worked together for like a month before I went back to Timeless Infinite Light and was like, so Ellis, one, we're the same age, so it's weird he's my intern.
Two long-haired trans guys that are the same age.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be in charge of this person.
Yeah, totally.
And then also I was like, oh, he has like the other half of the skills we need to actually get this done, which was like digitization experience, like archival file management experience. And also
you were feeling a little uncomfortable with the hierarchy.
I was feeling a little uncomfortable with the hierarchy. And also I was like, I need help. Like Ellis is smart. It doesn't make sense for us to not be working as equals on this project. Like it just started to feel like we were already functionally working as equals. And then obviously everyone at Timeless Infinite Light was like, yeah, great. You can't do this by yourself. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, then it was just you two side by side going through all of these archives and transcribing and kind of like what was the structure for choosing? Was it like you would flag an entry, the other person would be like, yeah, that's great, or like
Alice, it's time for you to talk about the documents.
I will. We have like a really elaborate Google Drive series of folders, architectural thingy that I was just kind of going through a couple of days ago. But just to go back to like the kind of dovetail skill sets, I think something that was so amazing for me to do this, it was like, you know, my archival dream job, obviously that didn't pay, but you know,
totally
was like a labor of love. And I think like the most amazing thing was like on the creative side, I would create some sort of structural thing, like a spreadsheet, and then like start to, you know, populate with like ideas. And then I would set it down and I would come back. And Zach had, you know, like actually added stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I made this thing. And then somebody used it, and not only used it, but like filled it up with really cool shit, you know? It's just like, and so there were a few different spreadsheets. There's a spreadsheet for each diary, which roughly corresponded to a year of Lou's life. He kept diaries for 30 years. He started kind of at age 9, really formally at age 11, and then continued until he died. In 1991. So we would make selections, and then we would have different themes that we were trying to sort of capture. And then we would have a kind of prioritization of like, how important does this part seem? And so it would just be like the first 3 words, ... the last word or something like that. And then, I think we use X's, like 3 X's was really important or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then kind of a more zoomed out way of looking at it is we had actually a timeline in which we had set up narrative threads. And the 2 big threads that we came up with were Lou as a gay man and Lou interfacing with, medicine and politics, I think.
Yeah.
And so those, we had things within then Lou as a gay man, casual sex, fantasy, space, travel, things like that. Lou interfacing with medicine and politics, deaths in his family, HIV, AIDS, medical transition, things like that. Yeah. And so those would stretch across time, and we would pull actual events from his life as if we were creating kind of a spreadsheet version of a biography with like, his first breakup, or the start of his medical transition, or the 8 millionth ball surgery that he had, or when his sister died, things like that. And so I think that was like another way of how we sort of conceptualized making the selections.
Wow. Basically what happened is Ellis made like a little playground for me to run around in with the file structure.
Totally. It's such a fun feeling to be like I do a lot of improv. It's so fun to be like, I'm offering up this thing and someone meets it with like equal or greater energy, and then you're ping-ponging.
Totally.
I feel like Lou would be so turned on imagining the 2 of you charting out his life on a Google spreadsheet.
I think the dude would have loved Google spreadsheets.
Yeah, I think
so too. He would have been there. And then I guess another kind of overarching like goal, thesis, theme, I don't know, of the project is to present Lou as a writer. Like not just as like a trans guy who happened to write but is primarily interesting because he's trans, but as someone who, like, regardless of what his sitch was, probably would have been doing writing and was doing it like with great interest from a young age. And that, like, going back to the timeline, part of the point of that was to make sure that we were catching him throughout his life, but that we were also having a narrative arc. Like, we were really trying to create a book that was true to what he said and what he recorded and presented it in a novelistic way so that it was really readable.
Totally.
And kind of like satisfying and took you through.
Wow.
I think we printed out the timeline at one point and we're had it on the wall, and we're doing like the, the Pepe Sylvia board.
Yeah.
Yep. There are photos.
The red string to the cowboy boots to the,
to the motorcycle, to the burrito.
To the second bad boyfriend.
Yeah. And yet another bad boyfriend.
I think part of it too, of what Zach was saying about trying to present Lou's story in a novelistic way, I think part of that too was a restorative project of trying to take Lou from being this like historical figure that was used as kind of a cautionary tale, or used in like different ways of talking about the pain and despair that trans people experience, and to bring it into a space of more so like, this is a man who lived a life in so many ways, and how to show that. I think a lot about how archives are necessarily incomplete, and it's, the people who come into them and bring the pieces to sort of fill around the edges and the negative space. With Lou, we wanted to offer our version of that, of how can we scoop around him and bring his pieces into the contemporary space that we exist. And so part of that was taking away the kind of clinical nature, going back to, those interviews that he'd done in these kind of sanitized environments where he was being seen not as Lou Sullivan, but as a gay trans man, as somebody who was not the particularly magnificent, strange, freaky, storied, had problems, but like full person that he was.
Totally, yeah. Not like the specimen or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think especially when we started, I was feeling really frustrated with like the martyr problem that trans history can have. And, I think that this is something that like Tourmaline's really talked about with Marsha P. Johnson, right?
Yeah.
It's like her name is in the mouth of people who would have spit in her face when she was alive because they've dropped out everything except like the pretty picture with the flower crown.
Yeah.
And I think that like at the time I started working with this archive, it felt like Lou really occupied that position for trans men, like along with a few others.
Did you put a butt on the cover just to be like, let's not forget all the intricate parts of this man?
Definitely. And do you want to talk about the source material for the butt?
Ooh.
Yeah, our cover designer, Joel Gregory, they were absolutely amazing throughout the process and really understood what we were trying to do. And I think going back to the roots of, this came from an artist space. And so I think that was another part of it is, we weren't trying to show the complete record of Lou Sullivan's life, but instead like this is an artistic and kind of embodiment of, this is one version of doing this. There's many ways to do it. And so part of it was, yeah, why not have that on the cover? And it was also in response to the, the belly button trans studies reader.
Oh, that's
reads
super
very
funny.
clinical. So, Joel and I went around to different museums in the Bay Area and photographed statuary butts for a few days. And didn't find one that we wanted. And so ended up, finding a historic statuary butt that fit our purpose.
And that statue is probably saying this name wrong too. That statue is Lacoon and his sons. It's like the big bearded man, he's wrestling a snake over his head, and there's like twinks around him.
God.
And it's from a 3D scan of that statue that's available on Wikipedia, which is why it looks a little digital.
Yes.
The other thing about that statue is that the original is in the Vatican.
Wow.
And there was this moment when the book first came
this.
out, and all of our photos of the book were getting flagged and taken down on Instagram, and we were like, but the Pope is fine with it.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Oh my God. I love that.
And then also, like Lou having been raised Catholic and having Catholicism,
it's perfect.
So influential.
Wow. That's so, I just remember, there's something that, like what you were talking about, the flower crown, where there's this kind of this like respectability polish that can be put over these like people that are really important. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love that there's like a hot butt on this pink book that I liked that touch. Was there anything like particularly surprising that stood out to the two of you while you were combing through all of these entries and stuff?
I mean, so many things. Like, I forgot until you said it just now, Ellis, about our, like, how important is this mark of XXX, which is kind of funny as a choice. Because
totally.
We were 3Xing like a lot of triple X entries.
That was intentional.
Yeah. How steamy.
There's a little bit of realizing. Actually, Ellis, I was just talking to John Andres from the archive at William Way about this the other day. He's talking about this artist, Roberta Dickinson, who he's researching, who was born in 1916. And she has all of these like erotic nude paintings. And he was going like, yeah, it feels weird to think about someone being born in 1916 being sexual. And I think it's less weird to think about someone from 1951 because, it's the rock and roll era. Like there's a lot of like dick swinging around on stage. And it's shocking to be like, oh my God, like someone my parents' age is a teenager, someone, and even just like someone experiencing queer and trans culture so many decades ago is having like the same interactions, like the same goofy infighting stuff, the same like funny run-ins. And then I think the other thing that shocked me about the diaries, because before that I had mostly encountered, my impression of Lou was mostly through the Ira Polly videos. I didn't think he was going to be as cool. Because you see him with this like doofy haircut and an ill-fitting suit, and you cannot totally picture him like doing cocaine in leather and cruising and like, screwing the guy in the rock band and like whatever. But he was out there. He was doing it.
Totally. You're like, oh, you named yourself after Lou Reed. Like seeing this little suit in like a chair, you know. Yeah, totally.
That was definitely, I mean, the fact that he was a rock and roller was something that super drew me to him as well. You know, those rock stars were definitely places in which I placed my masculinity as a young person. And so it was just, you know, rock, glam, Lou Reed, David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, like all that stuff was just like how I kind of conceived of that. And to see someone who had been doing that from so long ago, and as Zach was saying, you know, it's such a cool thing about Lou and any, I mean, I think trans people are doing the same things over and over again and in a spiral maybe in ways that kind of like iterate out in
the name of the
way.
podcast.
Yeah, titular moment.
We'll pause for a commercial break.
Yeah.
That was very good.
But yeah, I absolutely adored that about him. And then I think when we were giving the intro, one thing that I wanted to add and then totally spaced it was that this man kept extremely lascivious, extremely caring, kind, like freaky, sexual, like all sorts of different words could describe his diaries. And he was writing very early on as if he knew there was like going to be a reader. And that's something that, you know, he had a sort of prescience and was sort of his own archivist in that way. That for me as an archivist was amazing. So there would be entries where he would write on a page. He would buy these diaries. It would be one day, you know, the printed date would be, so it'd be 1982, and it would be January 1st, January 2nd, each day. And if he would run out of space on May 4th, if he hadn't written on January 2nd, he would go back and he would put a note pointing in on May 4th, go see January 2nd. And so then you would go flip back in time and go to January 2nd and read the continuation because he had more to say. He wasn't just going to end.
So funny.
Then sometimes he would run out of room on January 2nd.
Yes.
He would send you to a third, fourth, fifth location in the diary. Like it really was. Especially for me as like a dyslexic person, a little bit of a like dizzying experience.
Totally.
Text.
I mean, some of them, there would even be like onion skin paper they could write on top and like staple on top. I was like, okay, I need more room. But, you know, that sense of like, he's not just writing for himself, because if he's just writing to get it out, like, who cares if it's teeny tiny writing that's, you know, shoved in a page that gets lost or whatever. But there was this very clear of like, I'm pointing you to this space and, you know, this is something that you'll be able to reference. And he would even introduce, if he hadn't mentioned a person in a while, he would give a context of like, oh, this is that person that I met at the Gold Coast. Like he knew that this was going to be read. And so I think that's something that's, just completely baffled me. I had not experienced anything like that before.
Did that start from the jump, or did that get added later when he had like an HIV/AIDS diagnosis?
Way earlier.
No,
Wow,
this was early.
just always doing that.
This was his process.
Later on, he starts to write about how he wants to, like he could publish the diaries under a pseudonym, or now that he's dying, he could publish under his name, or, you know, he feels bad that he didn't get to publishing it, and now he knows he's not going to get to it. But for years and years and years before that, he still wrote in this way.
What a gift. Yeah, to like be reading that.
And then, you know, kind of more of what Zach was saying of, you know, him thinking, the fact that he so explicitly wrote about wanting to publish his diaries, that consent that was embedded was so helpful for us. We never had to have the question of like, would he have wanted this to stay private, you know, or are there things that we should remove? It was just like that. And the fact that he, you know, the copyright lays with the GLBT Historical Society, like that they hold that copyright, like that are two things that like made this project completely possible, you know?
Totally. Wow.
Yeah, that level of permission is just like something that you don't get in research, hardly ever. Yeah, and just especially this idea he had that like, what if there is never a person who could understand someone such as me to edit this, and to be like, especially like being with the physical diaries in San Francisco reading about him being in San Francisco and like being a young queer person, like, you know, you're like reading about him having like a weird date in Dolores Park, and you're like, I had a weird date in Dolores Park, you know.
Tell me about it, Lou. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. So I want to kind of talk about that part of the book. Like, there's a lot of transphobia around him. He's interacting with the medical, like, industrial complex. He's very misunderstood, but the book is still like extremely joyful. Was that a conscious decision to like kind of front load it and like just put these like incredibly relatable snapshots as like a lot of the meat of the book?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was definitely something that we considered early on, and it goes kind of back to that. How do you do that repair around Lou being used as a martyr, as Zach was talking about?
Yeah.
And I think also part of it was, you know, and you know, Zach also like referenced this, but we were trying to make the book that we wanted when we were young. And someone, you know, like could hand to us and say like, oh, you know, good luck, bud. This is awesome. You're on a journey. And, you know, I think something that was so special is, so Lou died in 91. Zach was born in 92 and I was born in 93. And so it was just like, it really felt like this moment of like, you know, a changing of the guard, and like we were able to pick up right where he left off. And so, I mean, I don't know, I was having a joyful time in my early to mid 20s, being in the Bay Area and engaging with other queer and trans people. And, you know, that was just something that felt really important to kind of give back to Lou as well.
Yeah.
And for me, the other piece of that is we had no idea that this book was going to get popular or like get picked up by a bigger small press with Nightboat. So when we were working on the manuscript, we were very literally making it for our friends.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Totally.
Like, we were like, it was the parts where we were like, yeah, we want to tell people about this, I think was guiding a lot of what we were pulling, was like the stuff that you would want to text somebody that you found while you were reading.
And we did.
Well, how is that the best kept secret? It's like literally just make something for your friends. Like think small in that way, and it will be like the personal is universal kind of like moment.
Yeah. And I think it made answering some of like the editorial questions easier, or like some of the content questions easier, to be like, if our audience is people who read Timeless Infinite Light books, we really know our audience. Like, that's like our immediate social circle.
Yeah, a lot of it reads like straight up erotica, which I'm like, this is awesome. Like, that was a really cool touch. What was that like? Were you kind of like smirking the whole time while like really putting your foot on the gas with that kind of like the hookup documentation and that kind of stuff? Or was it... Yeah, I guess that's my question. Was it really fun for you to be like having this be like a big part of the book?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think because it was so present in his diaries, I think we really tried to stay pretty faithful to what he wrote about. Dude had a lot of sex. He had a lot of fun. He had a lot of adventures. And so it was just like, it felt very easy. If like we wanted to, you know, at least reflect that back. And I think in the ways in which he wrote about it was something else that was just like, you know, like the thin gold chain or the soft hairs, you know, on a man's cheek, or those moments of like, these are the things that maybe wouldn't be popularized or you wouldn't see in like a porn, you know, but it's like something that is maybe much more interesting in certain ways.
There's like sentimentality to it that's like really beautiful.
And I think there's something in there about just like his lifelong interest in gay men and his lifelong love for other gay men, and like desire to get the essence of that all over him, you know?
Totally.
So I think that like, I don't know, there's something in there about like Lou's love letter to the gay men of San Francisco getting like folded back into a love letter to Lou.
Totally. I mean, this came out in 2019?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 6 years ago. Is there a reason why you think that this book has remained so relevant?
Well, I think it's for the same reason that Lou's like was easy to edit is because like he's fun to read. He's a good writer. Like people can do interesting things and still tell a bad story about it. He does interesting stuff and then tells a good story about it.
Totally.
Like, I think that also his way of approaching the world is like an antidote to a real like fearfulness that I think especially like a lot of white trans men walk around in, and that's very like kind of seductive to be like in this place of fear and victimization. And he's like, nah, baby, like I'm getting in a stranger's car. And I think even if that's not going to, you know, make people like log off and go cruise Polk Street, like there's still something being like, oh, okay, well, like if this corn-fed Milwaukee boy could do it.
Totally. It's like emboldening in like a cool way.
Well, and I was just going to also give a little Nightboat shout out, which is just like they run a good press. And the poet Andrea Abi Karam, who was the publicist there at the time when we were doing the book, and Andrea like busted their ass working on getting this book seen.
Wow.
Because of being good at their job, but also just like a personal interest in the project. Right. And so I think that upfront push got it into a lot of hands, which then subsequently like got it into more hands. And I think the pink booty cover, like I think the Butt Magazine style cover.
Yes, very Butt Magazine.
Does a lot.
It was just, there was a moment on the beach where this was everywhere. And then by the time I finished it and I'm like literally weeping, I'm like, why were you reading that at the beach? Like,
well, and I think that's the thing that's so cool about it is it's like, it's, you know, it's like you're bringing your friend to the beach. Like Lou was going to the beach.
Totally.
And
totally.
Yeah, definitely second the Nightboat. You know, we also, Andrea found like every like sleeper agent trans guy in mainstream media and like got interviews or press from, you know, and like was just absolutely amazing. And, you know, I think the other thing about Lou that it's just something that he connected people and he continues to connect people. And so many times I hear from people like, I gave a copy of the book, you know, to my friend, or I gave to my partner, you know, to my sweetie or whatever, you know, and I think that's something that, you know, with FTM International, with the newsletter, with the meetups, like that was something that he did. And so, you know, I think that seeing that the book is able to function, like his spirit in that is continuing on and people are connecting to each other. It's definitely about Lou and it's about the book, but it's also about trans people, like finding things to talk about and ways to connect and taking interest in their own history. And so, yeah, that's another part.
Yeah, I really love talking to archivists specifically when it comes to like trans histories. What's like the importance to you in honoring something like this, like these kind of like archival projects or other projects that you've worked on?
Oh, it's such a huge question.
I know.
I know. I mean, archives are cool because they're historiographies, you know, they're not just the narrative, but instead like an individual experience, whether that be a group of people or an individual person or something like that. And, you know, I think with archives, I mean, like if I had anything, it's like everyone write down your life and save all your flyers and, you know, keep a hard drive. Like I think that's a really important part of it. And because you never know like what is going to be someone's story, you know, that someone relates to in 50 years or something like that. And yeah, I've worked on different kinds of projects and, you know, I digitized Dorothea Lange's collection at Oakland Museum. I digitized the Bay Area Reporter at GLBT Historical Society. And, you know, now I'm working mostly with like graphic design and typography archives. And I think that the piece that like, you know, really comes through is that it feels like just like opening the door a little bit. Like, you know, Susan Stryker, who is absolutely amazing and so important to this project, she's really started it because she was the archivist who processed Lou's materials when they came into GLBT Historical Society. Wow. So she really opened that door. And so, you know, I think just like trying to follow in her footsteps in that way and to really make things available because, you know, I mean, this was an absolutely amazing project where Zach and I got together and like, you know, got to find all of the narratives and make this project. But most of my work now is much more behind the scenes. And, you know, it's like, here's images of everything you could possibly want to tell the story about this thing.
Yeah.
Have fun,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. I think it was so cool reading Susan's like intro and thinking about her seeing a zine that Lou made, like, and was just kind of like, well, that's not specifically for me, like, so it hadn't necessarily like bought it, but I mean, it just kind of reminded me of like Instagram or like the other trans guys posting, and you're kind of like, I came across that and I felt something, but we didn't necessarily connect, but I saw that you were like in my periphery, or kind of like, yeah.
Well, I think going right into that for me, like on the user end, not on the archivist end, one of the most important things about queer and trans history for me is the idea that you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
There's this, I think this might have been from Transgender Tapestry, which is a publication from 90s, 2000s. The Instagram account sexchanged.tbt has recently posted this. If you want to see it, very good Instagram account.
So
but it's like letters to the editor, and one says, too much in the last issue about transsexuals. And like, I'm a transvestite. Like, I want to hear about transvestites, too much about transsexuals. Then the next letter to the editor is too much about transvestites. I'm a transsexual. I want to hear more about transsexuals, right? And so like every single dynamic that has ever existed in a queer space is on this historic loop. And I think that by looking at the past, we can hopefully figure out ways to get out of some of the less good loops and like sidestep some of the less helpful ways of interacting.
Totally.
And like, and I think also just to like not get fucking depressed, right? And be like, yeah, it was hard for people to get medical care before, and they still figured out how to do it.
Yeah, I feel like seeing people who were able to like rise above certain things and kind of be like, what was in their like personality type that they were able to do this. And it is like specifically such a insane time right now news wise. I really find myself kind of like not reading anything when it is about trans people, because I'm just like, I think I just need to maintain my momentum in my life personally. But it is, yeah, it's pretty crazy to like think about what Lou was operating with and kind of the place that he got to with so many like potentially more like concrete like roadblocks in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, just a different world, but like still overlap.
What are you guys up to now? Is there anything that y'all are working on that we can shout out or talk about?
Zach, I want to hear more about your pottery, the water boy thing, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready for an art show that opens this summer in Philly. It's going to be at Fleischer Art Memorial as part of the Wind Challenge series, which is an annual juried award and exhibition series. And I am making a series of small sculpture works. What an interesting format to try to talk about sculpture in. An auditory. Okay, they are these closed ceramic forms. They're pressed with sand from my local creek on the outside. They kind of look like rocks or like a Fred Flintstone gravestone TV, and they have, some of them have like cutouts in the ceramic with an image behind them, and then light behind the image, like an LED circuit that like slowly goes on and off, or that flickers. And when you look at them, you kind of can't tell if you're looking at a digital screen or what they actually are, which is just like layers of paper and like clear transparency and a light. And then they also have some found pieces from the very polluted creek by my house. So like some fishing weights, ceramic shards. Some of those ceramic shards are in jewelry settings and hung on the side of the piece. So multimedia little sculptures. And I'm thinking about Darby Creek, which runs through Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and into the Tinicum Wildlife Preserve in Philly. It is host to one of the oldest human-made building in Pennsylvania, a few miles upstream from me, which is an early Swedish trapper's cabin. Wow. So the water here is one of like the oldest sites of colonization in the Philly area. And it's basically just been littered ever since. So I've been researching like historic dumping sites, mostly in the 1800s and early 1900s. And there's still contemporary like construction dumping. The water, like people do swim, but they shouldn't kind of vibe. Totally. But it's also this like beautiful, like visually stunning, like if you could swim there, it would be paradise. And so I'm thinking a lot about what this landscape architect and theorist Gilles Clement calls the third landscape. So the first landscape is the built human landscape, the cities, the suburbs, the farms. The second landscape is the nature preserve, so the intentionally restricted by people's area. And the third landscape is a formerly human-built area, often industrial, that has been abandoned or overused or sacrificed and has become a kind of preserve in that way. So that's a really long way to say I'm making sculpture works right now. And I'm also teaching wheel throwing, which is like one of the most satisfying jobs I've ever had in my life. If anyone is thinking about learning wheel throwing, quit watching them ASMRs and get in the studio, baby.
That's your next bumper sticker.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I make bumper stickers and jewelry and ceramics and pins, and you can get them all on my website.
Oh, cool. We'll link that.
I'm working full time at Letter from Archive, and I alluded to it, but I think I'm going to retake the LSAT in August and try to go to law school after that.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of like a branch of law that you'd love to be involved in?
Copyright.
Cool.
With digitization, usually the rights have been cleared right before in order to image it. And right now I do a little bit of rights and reproduction stuff. So say if someone wants to license an image from our collection for a magazine article or something like that, I coordinate with them. And so many times they're really interesting questions. Like someone wants to make a reproduction of a Bengali movie poster, from the 50s, and the person requesting it is based in New Zealand and I'm here in the States. And so what does that mean for copyright law, international copyright law? And I get the great pleasure to be like, I can't do that research for you. Please go figure it out and come back to me with the rights, which is so painful for me every time because I find myself like reading, about like Indian copyright law in the 50s, and then I'm like, wait, I'm not getting paid to do this.
Yeah, you're like, this isn't my job, so let's make it your job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have dreams. There was this. I'm not remembering the name, but in the 90s, there was this project related to artists who, had HIV and were not making it. And so like, as people were dying, there was an understanding like, these people need wills and we need to figure out what to do, how we're going to preserve and help their legacy endure, even though they're going to die. And so, I have dreams of maybe trying to do a clinic in law school of like an artist will clinic, because
we need that, Ellis.
Right? I know so many people who and just to set up my little, lemonade stand and just say like, please come get your will.
The darkest lemonade stand. Swing by, face mortality. Yeah. But that's awesome. I agree. It's so needed. Where can someone buy this book? And if they did buy it, what would you recommend they look for next?
Nightboat Books.
Also, your local bookstore. Request it from your local library. Lou was a big library fan and was very frustrated. He did not find more books on trans life in the library.
That's great.
What to read next is a really good question. Time is the Thing a Body Moves Through by T. Fleischman. Gorgeous.
Such a good book.
Incredible. City of Night by John Recchi, one of Lou's favorite books, and a pretty wild ride through the seedy underbelly of, when does the book take place? I don't know.
60s.
The 60s. Thank you.
Corpses, Fools, and Monsters, A History and Future of Transness in Cinema.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, that's Willow McClay and Caden Mark Gardner.
Cool.
Caden is a friend of the project, and there's a lot of films mentioned that Lou is a big fan of, and also just another kind of way of, I don't know, looking at history, and you know, Lou was so embedded in the culture of his time, and I think getting to kind of trace through some of those narratives and from a place of a trans cinema perspective has been really fun for me recently.
That's awesome.
You can't go wrong with Transgender History by Susan Stryker. I think required reading for not sounding like a total doofus when you talk about trans life in the US. Just like go ahead and like sound smart at parties and read that one.
Yeah.
And then another one, I think the author's name is Eric Cervini, The Deviants War, The Homosexual versus the United States of America. A little bit dry, but fascinating, and is mostly focused on Frank Kameny, who was a big part of the homophile movement, which kind of predates the gay liberation movement, and is about the history of ways that the federal government has attempted to make homosexuality illegal.
Wow.
His specific experience getting fired from his astronomer job at NASA during the Lavender Scare
Wow.
in the 50s.
Wow. Cool. Oh my gosh, I have such a dog whistle for the word deviant now. And it is really crazy how often people use it for like queer people or trans people or sexuality that's kind of outside of the norm. It's very interesting.
2 more quick ones, if that's cool.
Yeah, please.
Conundrum, Jan Morris, and Canary by Canary Khan, early 70s trans memoirs that I think did do such an amazing job of, you know, talking about transness before the like I was born in the wrong body metaphor kind of prevails into the trans memoir space.
Wow. Okay, cool. Wow. Yeah. Well, I think we'll try to link a bunch of these in the show notes or do
I feel like I'm going to think of 10 more as soon as we stop recording, but that's fine.
What are you reading right now, Ali?
Well, I finished We Both Laughed in Pleasure because sometimes you read something that's so similar to your experience, you can't read it. The amount of time you can read it is cut short because you're like, I need to think about this now.
I'm going to go on a journey. 3 sentences just took me for a spin. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
I actually can't imagine reading the books like straight through for
it's like
we were steeped in it for years before we actually were like reading it through to look for typos.
It almost feels like a devotional or like 12-step book kind of thing where I'm just like, I have my little thing to consider for the day.
Okay, I love that.
Also, Ellis has an archive of materials related to like the book, right? Things we worked on, but also memes. And like screenshots of Grindr, people being like, come read the book with me.
Oh, my.
I also keep like waiting for someone to make a meme and then we'll just make it myself, right? Like the 2 guys looking out the bus, whatever, and then the one guy goes to sit with the other guy and he hands like Dr. Phil, Dr. Phil passing you the book. God, like last year I really got on one for like a week and was making. I did like the really like crunchy edit of the 2 super muscular guys at the beach, and it says, "Hey, can we borrow your copy of We Both Laughed in Pleasure?" Got wet. There's the oh girl no, and then it's anyway. Yeah, whatever.
R.I.P. Lou Sullivan. You would have loved Grindr.
Yeah. Yes. So funny.
Yeah.
When we started working on the project, to give you a sense of how long ago it was R.I.P. Lou Sullivan. You would have loved Craigslist Personals.
Yeah.
For tea.
Yeah.
But also that dude would be out on Sniffies right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I think he would be like a 2025 Snapchat user, potentially.
For sexy stuff or just for...
Yeah, but also a picture of like his pet bird.
Oh my God.
Mr. Bird. Mr. Bird would definitely be on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Zach Ozma and Ellis Martin. You can order We Both Laughed in Pleasure from Nightboat Books, which is linked in our show notes, or you can look for it at your local bookstore. Keep an eye out for a pink cover with a butt on it. You could also request that your local library get a copy.
And in very exciting news, we are going to have both Zach and Ellis back for a book club about We Both Laughed in Pleasure on our Discord. So go get your copy so you can start reading. We'll announce when that date is soon. And if you want to join our Patreon, it's just $2 a month. So you can be a part of that Discord and ask Zach and Ellis any of your burning questions about this hot little book. And sad.
Hot and sad little book, sexy and sad.
Gender Spiral is an original podcast from Audiation. This episode was mixed by Matt Noble. Theme music is composed by Chanel Kirchlow, remixed by Daria Lord. Additional music by Command Jasmine, courtesy of Molten Heart, with art by Joey Hahn and graphics by Michael Tyrone Delaney.
The show is executive produced by Ireland Meacham, myself, Babette Thomas, and my co-host Allie Beardsley, along with Sandy Smullins, with some additional story editing from Susie Armitage.
If you want to help us out, you can rate or review us wherever you're listening to us right now, and follow us on Instagram at Gender Spiral to get notified about new episodes.
And be sure to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/genderspiralpodcast. For $2 a month, you can get access to our Discord community. Higher tiers will get you exclusive bonus content, plus gifts from us like these cute little monthly postcards and free merch.
You can also check us out at genderspiralpod.com, where you'll find transcripts for each episode and a link to leave us a voicemail. And you can shop our merch store.
Audiation.